very well happen. And that is the Tories be reduced to 100, 150 seats, or perhaps even lower, and actually Keir Starmer having a majority of around 300, 250, 300 in the House of Commons, even larger than Tony Blair's in 1997, and being able to implement policies, but particularly even potentially even really bad laws.
Well, let's look ahead to the manifesto today. And Times Radio's Theo Usherwood is here. Theo, good morning.
Very good morning to you, Rosie.
Keir Starmer is promising a total change in direction. So what's the vision?
So the vision is economic growth. Keir Starmer is going to be launching Labour's manifesto in Manchester today, saying his manifesto is for wealth creation. This is our number one priority. The mandate we seek from Britain at this election is for economic growth. He'll go on to say growth is our core business, the end and the means of national renewal. And this is an argument that he's made before, but basically what he wants to do is, and he's quite vague in this manifesto launch, and I'll come on to some of what he says about tax in a minute, what he's trying to do, and we saw the figures out yesterday in terms of GDP flatlining in April of this year, although there was a slight rise over the quarter. But what he wants to do is he wants to get Britain firing on all cylinders again. And the reason he's talking about this being a manifesto for wealth creation is he doesn't want to scare the horses in terms of putting off potential voters coming over from the Conservative Party who are worried that he'll implement a high tax regime. You heard the excerpt from when he was questioned about Jeremy Corbyn and backing his manifesto in 2019. There was also a very testy exchange around tax. Keir Starmer saying that he's not going to raise taxes on working people, and by that he means VAT, income tax, and national insurance contributions. Today he's going to announce that corporation tax is not going to go above 25%. That's going to be a manifesto commitment, but that does leave capital gains tax. It does leave a re-evaluation of the council tax bans as well, and it does, and I think this is going to be potentially a crucial one, around fuel duty. The Tories have frozen any rise that since going back to 2010 have frozen any rise in fuel duty as a result of trying to help particularly working people with their bills, their weekly, monthly bills in terms of running a car. He hasn't ruled out scrapping that and actually increasing fuel duty over the course of the next Parliament.
Yeah, I mean, we've heard, that there aren't going to be any surprises. How fair is it to say that Keir Starmer has been pretty cautious?
Yes, I mean this is the so-called Ming Vase strategy, where you don't want to. Keir Starmer doesn't want to do anything that would set hairs running, that anything that would lead to a wobble in the polls and potentially hand momentum to the Conservatives. And you've seen, as you rightly pointed out, to a significant change in strategy, which happened on Times Radio yesterday when Grant Shapps, the Defence Secretary, said that it would be, warned against handing Labour a supermajority. That's a plea to traditional Conservative voters that in the end, this is going to be a choice between Keir Starmer and Rishi Sunak, and the danger, this is the argument from Grant Shapps, and I think we're going to be hearing more of this over the last 3 weeks of the campaign. The danger is, that he's pointing out, is there's a difference between having Keir Starmer in number 10, where you have a really quite a strong functioning opposition in the Conservative Party against Keir Starmer, facing off against Keir Starmer, able to do build alliances with potential Labour rebels, the SNP, the Liberal Democrats, and then a decimation of the Conservative. This is the other prospect that he's raising now: decimation of the Conservative Party, where you have very, very small, weak opposition in numbers, and then actually Keir Starmer, as a Labour leader, is able to do what he wants in the House of Commons because his majority is so big, and the opposition parties aren't able to actually do anything about it. And that's something that Grant Shapps, and I'm sure the Tory strategists who came up with that particular phrase around a supermajority, are trying to hammer home to Conservative voters that actually the way things are going, unless they turn out and vote Tory at this election, Keir Starmer is going to have, in their words, a blank check
Yeah, that's
to
what they
do
keep
what he
saying.
wants.
What do you make of the strategy, Theo, from the Conservatives? Is it sort of a last-ditch attempt, or is it quite clever?
Oh, I think it's both. I think it's a last ditch attempt, and I think it seems to be. And you heard, and I listened to what Kate McCann was saying as political editor. You know, that it seems to be priced in now that Keir Starmer is going to become prime minister, or in the morning of July the 5th, when all the votes start to get totted up, and it's clear that Labour are on course for a significant win. And I think what they're trying to do, the Tories are trying to do, is launch a rearguard action and try to draw a clear distinction between Keir Starmer, say, having a majority of 20, 30, 40 MPs at most in the House of Commons, and with that actually having checked power, because there is always going to be the possibility that Conservative MPs will be able to do deals with rebels who are very unhappy about a particular policy at any given time that Keir Starmer has come up with. And then actually what the polls are suggesting could very well happen, and polling experts and psephologists are suggesting could very well happen, and that is the Tories be reduced to 100, 150 seats, or perhaps even lower, and actually Keir Starmer having a majority of around 300, 250, 300 in the House of Commons, even larger than Tony Blair's in 1997, and being able to implement policies, but particularly even potentially even really bad laws, but being able to do so because there's no way of the House of Commons of Parliament coming together and saying to Keir Starmer, actually, this is bad news. What you're doing is not necessarily in the national interest, and you're able to and being able to put up any kind of resistance to that.
Yeah, well, exactly. Theo, thank you very much. Theo Usherwood from Times Radio, political correspondent, going through what we can expect a little bit later on when Keir Starmer in Manchester unveils the manifesto. And as I've said, most of it we know about. Keir Starmer said there's going to be no surprises. It's really interesting what you make of this Conservative strategy, as Theo's just laid out for us. Dave, good morning, says, I think a blank cheque for Rachel Reeves seems safe enough. Stephen Brighton says, I think it's possible that both can be true. That is, a Labour win of 490 odd seats would pose problems for accountability, but also that the Tories absolutely deserve a total wipeout. Do you kind of agree with Grant Shapps when he says, we would argue, I'm quoting here, we would argue that you don't have someone receive a supermajority? This is the government talking about the opposition and how they might perform in the election. His concern is that Keir Starmer's victory could be so total, so complete, that power would be unchecked and democracy would be undermined. Is that a problem, or do you think the Conservatives deserve it?